Tonight I have some very important information that shows why we shouldn't just jump to conclusions, why we shouldn't just accept the information that first comes out because it supports what we want to feel, what feels good in our minds, what feels comfortable in our minds. A lot of interesting information is coming out. We'll talk about it more in a moment after the intro and the daily Bible verse or chapter. I'm sorry, I'm running behind. Anyway, let's get the intro out of the way and the Bible chapter, and I will speak about it. Here you go.
Things I think while I lie awake and contemplate tonight are wearing me out. Well, maybe tomorrow the world will wake and get it right, but I have my doubts yet. During the day, well, I design machines of war that scream through the sky. 'Cause I, for one, I like to go to bed free at night under these stars and stripes. And I have no doubt that we're coming out. Yes, I have my doubts, and I have my doubts that we'll make it back out. Yes, I have my doubts. But they'll wind you up and pull the cord until you're spun right out. And I don't understand. Roll the dice and raise the price to feed the machine's mouth. Call it the progress of man. And I have my doubt that we're coming out. Yes, I have my doubt. And I have my doubt that we'll make it back out. I have my doubts. So I'll drink my stuff and raise some hell and shoot my guns to the end of my time. You can have the booze and go to hell and take the guns, but I know they won't be mine. And I have my doubt that we're coming out. Yes, I have my doubts. And I have my doubt that we'll make it back out. Yes, I have my doubts. So we're all messed up and out of touch. Let's text someone who's in the other room. So no wonder why we don't say hi or know anyone. I might as well move to the moon. So maybe I'm wrong.
Revelation 16. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, Go your ways, and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth. And there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. And I heard the angel of the waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and wast and shalt be, because thou hast judged thus. For they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. And I heard another out of the altar say, Even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are thy judgments. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And men were scorched with great heat, and blasphemed the name of God, which hath power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth, and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth, and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air. And there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings. And there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake, and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. And men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, for the plague thereof was exceeding great.
You know, there's a lot of parables in there, and they can be picked up on if people just use a little bit of discernment. Wow, there is so much information just in that one chapter alone. It's amazing. It's amazing, and so many people just ignore it. You know, you don't have to be religious. You don't even have to be a believer to understand the lessons that are taught, to understand the importance of the information found in there. Wow, it's just awe-inspiring sometimes. But, wow, Ferguson. And I know a lot of people are probably getting tired of hearing it. But a lot of people aren't, and those people in particular, aren't directly affected by it. You know, it's pretty amazing the people that throw out their opinions and their thoughts and stuff, and they're not directly affected by it. But then one day, soon, their life is going to be affected by the police state, by the government that is corrupted, that's been taken over. And if those people don't stand with the people that are trying to stand up now, it's going to be too late. That's just a fact. It's just a fact. Hopefully tonight I can show you some things that might enlighten you as to the larger agenda here. It's not stuff for tinfoil hats. It's not stuff for conspiracy theories. It's facts, and it's facts that everybody really needs to look at and understand and see what is going on here and start asking why. Because a lot of the things that I show you may not make a whole lot of sense. By the way, I want to apologize to those the other night that I fell asleep on when I was restreaming the live streams from Ferguson and LA. I apologize. I dozed off. I fell asleep at the wheel, so to speak. I'm sorry about that. Then last night I decided, I was going to take Thanksgiving off. I originally was going to do a show, and then I thought, no, I'm just going to take it off and relax. Wow. So let's go ahead and get suspicious observers out of the way, and then we'll get on the Ferguson topic. And then I got some other news besides Ferguson to go over as well. Yeah, I don't have the link. I'm getting it now for today's show. You know how it goes. I am running so behind today. So, all right, we're ready. We're good. So without further ado, here is Suspicious Observers for today, and I will be right back.
Good morning, folks. We see some X-ray flashing from the incoming sunspot groups here. The largest was only a C8 flare. Regardless of how many sunspots there are, we should expect relatively lower flare activity until December when the planets line up again. And indeed, we do have quite a few spots. Only 3 have any magnetic complexity, however. Let's take a look. Delta class departing with blue and red mixing there. Got some mixing potential south incoming as well, and complexity near the lead of the northern incoming group. Zooming out in 211 angstroms, you see the northern coronal hole departing, very dark, and the dark southern polar coronal hole fairly set in his ways. If we zoom in up north, you can see the thin dark rope of a plasma filament snaking behind that coronal hole. It stayed stable, but also remains an eruption threat. 3 days of solar wind telemetry show yesterday's rise in plasma temperature, speed, and density. However, this more intense stream has north-pointing magnetism, and the BZ component is entirely positive, leaving our shield very solid. The increased intensity merely added energy to the system, through a bit of an uppercut to the electron flux there. Let's put our feet back on the ground for yet another volcano eruption. This time, one of Japan's largest began belching ash and smoke, first time it's erupted in 22 years. It has already disrupted flights, and we can only hope for a cool down over the next day. More activity could begin to threaten large areas of air travel. We also had our second 5-pointer in Colombia in as many days, and we took a moderate tremor off eastern India as well. We've got an article about how the yearly icebergs have begun shifting in Antarctica. I wonder if these could act to cool the oceans like big ice cubes. It's linked for you below. We've also got a nice bit on Hellas chaos on Mars. The impact zone has been re-imaged. I'd suggest it's worth a read. Let's kick to weather and zoom in on the South China Sea. I thought this thing was dying before it re-ramped last night and began breaking for the Vietnam coastline. In the South Indian Ocean, this storm moves ever closer to Madagascar, already engulfing small islands. Here are the overnight lows in the U.S., in addition to major cold up north. This extends all the way down into Florida, where the mobile observatory is between Orlando and Tampa. It's 41 degrees at the Loves off exit 44. If you don't think it can snow here this winter, think again. The temperature delta from a day ago is fairly menacing, but easily understood when you see the mega high pressure node complemented by a quadrilo system out west. I just made up that word, by the way, but it accurately describes that thing out there pulling warm air northward. Can't wait till that gets to the east. Meanwhile, let's not sleep on the snow alerts for this evening. In Europe, the only note is this massive low. Kind of came out of nowhere, and these flows up from the south here drive thunderstorm warnings at the coastlines and in northern Africa. Precipitable water overlay shows the storm potential in the low and arching convergence in northern Australia. And even without showing it in New Zealand, we've got a curling flow up from the south to make a convergence that will indeed add a storm threat to the southeast as well. We've got shots of our star to close. It's 5:55 a.m. Eastern Time. That's the news. Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.
And thanks to Ben Davidson for another daily report. And need to get set back down here. I was sneaking another cup of coffee during his report. I told you I'm running extremely behind. Oh, wow. Okay, so here's what's been going on today. Today, Ferguson and last night, protesters have been running around different stores, different malls, doing their thing. And yay. Yeah, I know I don't sound real excited. I'm so discombobulated. I'm, like I say, running way behind. Yeah, I do support what they're doing. They're being peaceful. They're doing a good job. I would have restreamed it, but being inside these malls, whether it be the buildings themselves or whether it be other things in check, their signals just aren't doing too well. It's in and out. They can barely get a stream out. And so it seemed kind of pointless to go up and try to restream them. However, I do suspect that there will be protesting tonight and things going on tonight. And I would expect that you will see me restreaming again. I've got an overwhelming response from doing that. As well, I put up... I allowed the chat. I still don't have comments available, but I have allowed the chat. Oops, wrong thing. I don't want that one. I have allowed the chat to go open. And so what I'm doing is trying to find the right window because I want you guys to be able to like ask questions and make comments during the show. And I said that and forgot about that. And I apologize. I don't have that window open. I'm doing it now. I'm telling you, I am so behind. So I do have that window open now. Just wanted to get that open. Anyway, so that's what's been going on today. They've been going around. And doing their thing, having die-ins as they call them. At these malls. They have totally shut down. They totally shut down, what mall was that? I know the West County Mall was one they shut down. The Galleria. They had totally shut down that one as well. And yay. And a lot of people are saying, okay, well, what does the Ferguson thing have to do with capitalism or, Well, here's the thing. It's about getting attention, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's about making themselves noticed, and that's important. That's really important. During the Occupy Wall Street protests, there were a lot of people throwing fits because, all those people were camping out in public parks. They were causing an eyesore. And the thing of it is how can you get people's attention? You can't pull people away from their TV shows, their cell phones, their, social media, and I'm on social media a lot, but I do believe it's obvious that I use social media in a different manner than what the majority does. Wow. So anyway, getting a little back on topic, more back on topic. And I'm checking Twitters too to see that the National Guard is like going nuts, right? They're everywhere. Now they're at the Peabody Opera House in downtown St. Louis. There was a tweet earlier where they were in somewhere in Ferguson, I seen. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy what is going on. Let's go ahead and get on, and I'll explain at least what I feel is really going on, what the real agenda is. I'm sorry I seem so discombobulated today. I'm not usually that bad. So first of all, let's get to this. I think this is the most important when it comes to the topic. Maybe it'll give me a chance to refocus my mind and hopefully okay. Let's hoping the video didn't like disappear or something, because that sometimes happens. But I thought this was important for everybody to know and to understand, because without this bit of information, we're still learning things about.
Just before Officer Darren Wilson testified.
There's no way. There we go. There's still information that is coming out about everything from
grand jury
Sandy Hook to
his killing of Michael Brown.
Wow.
The assistant district attorney handling the case said this.
Okay, I'll talk after
to
this.
the grand jurors. I'm going to pass out to you all. You are all going to receive a copy of a statute. It is section 563046, and it says law enforcement officers' use of force in making an arrest, and it is the law on what is permissible, what force is permissible, and when in making an arrest by a police officer. The assistant district attorney, Kathy Alizadeh, then handed the grand jury a copy of a 1979 Missouri law that was ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in 1985.
Wow, I apologize. This is, let me go ahead and let it buffer a little bit, if it will, and I'll continue what I was saying. So we are still learning about things from, say, Sandy Hook, 9/11, even the JFK assassination. We are still gathering so much information about these events and what really happened, and finding out more and more inside information. And there's just more views that are coming in, just more, this is still relatively new. I mean, we're talking, the shooting was August 9th, and, it's just crazy. There are so many things, and this is so important. This video and its content is so important to the discussion, because it takes most everything off the table. And I'm not looking just to, this isn't a Darren Wilson witch hunt. Not on my part, not whatsoever. My stake is something totally else. It isn't that. And there are so many other cases that are much more cut and dry. That is just, it's crazy. The 12-year-old boy. Do I have something else in my news about? I thought that I had another story. I don't know, but I mean, there are so many cases that are much more prevalent to this one. This one almost seems to where, without facts like this that I'm going to show you and other important information, it just, this one I could see where people could argue back and forth, except for one important factor that everybody keeps seeming to overlook. And this is what happens when we stop talking about the real problem and when we allow an issue to be taken over by hot button topics such as race. Yeah, there's still racism. But we have to be important not to make that the point of the discussion. And I know a lot of people might think, oh, no, we don't want to do that. We don't. Yeah, we do. We have to. Because if we make racism the point of discussion, we're going to get nowhere, which is the same place we've gotten in the last 50, 60 years when we've discussed racism. Absolutely nowhere. We haven't. We haven't. After blacks were given the right to vote and the civil rights laws and stuff were put in place, there has not been really a single advancement. Honestly, there hasn't. And it would seem to me that the government silently supports racism more now than they did then. That's what you have to watch out for. That's what you have to be careful for. You can't just look at the surface of things. You have to look at the big picture. You know, the racism thing will take care of itself if we look at humanity. You know, but back to the case, when somebody is shot in the top of the head by someone that obviously can't shoot the side of a barn if they were standing inside of it, you know, you have to think that that shot was taken in a relatively calm moment at a relatively close position and with, you know, a relatively decent amount of time to aim. You know, so I don't think there's too much argument that the last shot that was taken was after Michael Brown was already laying there on the ground. So my question is, why did that shot need to be taken? You know, this isn't about black, white. I really don't think, yeah, I do think that Darren Wilson needs to be indicted. I think he needs to be set in jail. I think he needs to be charged with the crime. I really do. And it's not because I'm jumping on Michael Brown's side. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the plain facts. It's obvious that Michael Brown was on the ground when Darren Wilson took that final shot. To me, that's common sense. That shot was not needed. Now, to say whether or not that was the fatal shot, if Michael Brown could have lived, if that shot wasn't, I'm not getting into that debate either. It's a bunch of what ifs. I'm going by the facts that are presented, the obvious facts that are presented that couldn't have been manipulated so much. So anyway, I believe that's had a chance to buffer good. Let's go ahead and play this, and then we'll talk more about it.
What force is permissible, and when in making an arrest by a police officer. The Assistant District Attorney, Kathy Alizadeh, then handed the grand jury a copy of a 1979 Missouri law that was ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in 1985. She was handing them something that had not been law in Missouri during her entire legal career. But it was very helpful to Officer Darren Wilson that the Assistant District Attorney handed the grand jury an old unconstitutional law which said incorrectly that it is legal to shoot fleeing suspects simply because they are fleeing. By handing the grand jury that unconstitutional law, the Assistant District Attorney dramatically lowered the standard by which Darren Wilson could be judged. She was telling the grand jury with that document that Darren Wilson had the right, the legal right, to shoot and kill Michael Brown as soon as Michael Brown started running away from him. She was telling the grand jury that Darren Wilson didn't have to feel his life threatened at all by Michael Brown. She was taking the hurdle that Darren Wilson had to get over in his testimony and flattening it. She was making it impossible for Darren Wilson to fail in front of this grand jury. She was doing all of that by handing the grand jury a so-called law that has never been the law of Missouri during her entire legal career. The portion of the Missouri law that was ruled unconstitutional says that a police officer is justified in the use of such physical force as he or she reasonably believes is immediately necessary to effect the arrest or prevent the escape from custody. That was ruled unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in 1985. It was legal to shoot and kill fleeing suspects in most states until the Supreme Court made it illegal in 1985, and everyone in law enforcement knows that. Everyone except the two assistant district attorneys who were presenting the evidence to the grand jury in one of the most important cases of police use of deadly force in this country since 1985. There is nothing more helpful the assistant district attorney could have done for Officer Darren Wilson right before his testimony than show that incorrect, outdated, unconstitutional law to the grand jury. The grand jury then listened to Officer Wilson's testimony with the belief that anything he did to Michael Brown would be fully justified legally simply because Michael Brown at some point ran away from Officer Wilson. There was a time when that's all you had to do in America to be legally shot and killed by a police officer, just run away from the officer. In those days, American police were summarily executing people in the streets for suspicion of crimes that, if they were convicted for, they would not have gotten the death penalty, and in many cases not even gone to jail. Kids jumping out of stolen cars and running away from cops could be legally shot in the back and killed in those days for a crime that obviously did not carry the death penalty. There was actually one case of a man who spit on a police officer and then ran away from the police officer and was legally shot and killed by the police officer. Spitting on a police officer was a crime in that state, but it did not carry the death penalty unless you ran away from the officer. The district attorney's office allowed the grand jurors to travel back in time to the good old days of American law enforcement when the cops could shoot people for running away. Before Darren Wilson was born, that's how far back in time they went. The assistant district attorneys did that by using the old unconstitutional law as the window through which these grand jurors would evaluate Darren Wilson's conduct. The grand jury listened to the officer's testimony, believing that according to the law, Michael Brown did not have to pose any kind of threat to Officer Wilson to justify Officer Wilson shooting him dead. Weeks after Officer Wilson testified, several weeks after that, just as the grand jury was about to consider what charges they might vote for, the assistant district attorney, Kathy Elizadeh, knew that she had better amend the record of these proceedings by introducing to the grand jury the real law, the accurate law on police use of deadly force in Missouri. And so she told the grand jury, previously, in the very beginning of this process, I printed out a statute for you that was the statute in Missouri for the use of force to effect an arrest. So if you all want to get those out, what we have discovered, and we have been going along with this, doing our research, is that the statute in the state of Missouri does not comply with the case law. This doesn't sound probably unfamiliar to you, that the law is codified in a written form in books, and they're called statutes, but courts interpret those statutes, and so the statute for the use of force to effect an arrest in the state of Missouri does not comply with the United States Supreme Court cases. So the statute I gave you, if you want to fold that in half, just so that you don't necessarily rely on that, because there is a portion of that doesn't comply with the law. She then handed out to the grand jury a new document explaining the law on police officers' use of force, and then said, that does correctly state what the law is on when an officer can use force and when he can use deadly force in effecting an arrest. Okay? I don't want you to get confused, and don't rely on that copy or that print out of the statute that I've given you a long time ago. It is not entirely incorrect or inaccurate, but there is something in it that's not correct. Ignore it totally. A grand juror then asked, the Supreme Court, federal court, overrides Missouri statutes? Now, we all learned the answer to that in high school. It is one word, yes. That is why we no longer have segregated schools in this country. The Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional and illegal to have segregated schools, and that is the only reason states like Mississippi and Alabama and Arkansas and, yes, Missouri no longer have segregated schools. But the assistant district attorney, when asked the simplest question she could possibly be asked by a grand juror, does the Supreme Court override Missouri statutes, couldn't bring herself to say a simple, truthful yes. Instead, she actually said, quote, just don't worry about that. Her full reply, word for word, was, as far as you need to know, just don't worry about that. The other assistant district attorney in the room added, we don't want to get into a law class. America already had a law class on this when Alabama Governor George Wallace stood in the doorway to prevent the first black students from attending class at the University of Alabama because the United States Supreme Court had ruled states' segregation laws to be unconstitutional. The federal government crushed the little, powerless, angry governor of Alabama when he needed to be crushed in that doorway by the righteous power of the United States Supreme Court and the federal government. It doesn't take a law class to explain to a grand juror that, yes, the United States Supreme Court does indeed override Missouri statutes. It takes one word. Yes. But that is not the worst, most unprofessional aspect of Assistant District Attorney Kathy Alizade's presentation to the grand jury about this law. The very worst part of it is that she never, ever explained to the grand jury what was incorrect about the unconstitutional statute that she had given them and left with them as one of their official papers for weeks and weeks and weeks. You will not find another legal proceeding in which jurors and grand jurors are simply handed a law and then weeks later handed a correction to that law, and then the grand jurors are simply left to figure out the difference in the laws by themselves. That is actually something you would do in a law class. Figure it out by yourself. With prosecutors like this, Darren Wilson never really needed a defense lawyer.
Very compelling. And it really brings things to light. Sorry about that. It really brings things to light. Ooh, God. Let me get that out of there. I don't want to see that. I'm just kidding. It really brings things to light. It really does. Wow. I'm telling you, there's a bigger agenda here, and I'm more gathered than what I sound. I really am. It's just this next story just kind of gets me, because I think it opens up what is going on. Well, let me do the story first. And that's that. There's a bigger agenda here, folks, and I'm gonna tell you. I made a prediction. I believe I've made it here. I know I've made it around the home here. I've made the prediction to my girlfriend. I've made it to others, and I believe I've made it here on the show. And I'll make it again. We all know that the Missouri State Grand Jury did not indict Darren Wilson. I am going to predict that the federal investigation is indeed going to indict. I believe that's what's going to happen, because I do believe that they're taking this case and doing everything they can to cause a civil war. There's reports that are being made that the fires that started in a majority of those buildings on Monday night started in the center of the buildings, and that it appears that they were timed. Interesting. Just like it's interesting that the Missouri National Guard was not allowed to do anything that night. Why would you wait? When you knew, when you've been preparing for months, when you sent letters out in schools, when you've done all this and spent hours on TV just rambling on and on, about this, that, and the other thing. And why wouldn't you have at least let the Missouri National Guard take position if you really thought there was going to be just a crazy amount of violence, looting, rioting, vandalism? I'm telling you, there's a much bigger agenda here. And here's another story that, I will tell you this. There's a difference in these criminals and the protesters. And it seems like the mainstream media is trying to link them all together and make it look like they're all in the same. And I'm telling you, they are not. The people that were in the malls and still in stores and malls in St. Louis, I believe at this exact current time, they are not criminals. They are not lighting fires. They are not tearing stuff up. They are standing up for their beliefs. Just supported, and those to be what this is. The media are the bad guys. They're simply not. They are not. So anyway, I was checking Twitter real quick. Thieves hit the elementary schools. Some kids may return from break to find classroom windows boarded. Armed criminals struck an elementary school in Ferguson during overnight riots this week. Resident Renwick Ware said, "Now you're interfering with the school. You're messing with the kids' education now." Students at Griffith Elementary already missed extra classes this week. Now they may see boarded windows and missing electronics when the doors open at 8:30 a.m. Monday. Ware said it's the work of 4 men in 2 cars, he said. They had guns on them and all that, and I approached and came out of my driveway. I noticed they were loading stuff up. Ferguson police report stolen electronics, some of which they've already recovered. Ware says Ferguson officers and National Guardsmen responded quickly after he drove to the command station to report what he witnessed. Ware said, "I was getting ready to head over to my office because I got a call that they knocked out City Hall windows, and they knocked out windows to the office that I was in. So happened that I came out that night. I ran right into this," he added. "One was standing through the sunroof of the white vehicle with his gun in the air." Mr. Island sisters attended Griffith School when they used to live next door. Melissa Eilman said, "I loved it. Walked right across the street to go to school." Amy Eilman said, "They need to feel safe while they're at school. That's a place where they need to feel comfortable." I'm telling you right now, this is a PSYOP. This has got PSYOP written all over it. Anytime the government wants to push an agenda, they speak about safety and they speak about children. They always bring children into it. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, wow, this Mike dude has a bigger tinfoil hat than anybody on this planet. Well, let me show you the next story, and maybe that tinfoil hat will start to shrink a little bit. Because it's not necessarily report itself. It's what's on mainstream media, and I will get to that. Not mainstream, social media, sorry. Group protects Ferguson businesses from looters and arsonists. Now, I'll go ahead and just play the video real quick.
In Ferguson, small business owners are taking a stand against looters and arsonists. They call themselves the Oath Keepers, and you'll see them standing guard on roofs. The group is mostly made up of men with military or law enforcement backgrounds, and they are offering protection for people who cannot afford security protection at their businesses.
The protection of property doesn't allow in the state of Missouri a lot of force. We have less lethal beanbags and things and other techniques that we don't like to talk about openly that we can use to stop vandalism. But arson's a different thing, and that was our biggest concern here.
The group has a branch located here, but members, we have learned, have traveled from as far as Iowa to help, and they plan to be here indefinitely.
Okay, I see you there, Captain Obvious. No, and no, I'm not racist, not whatsoever. But I think you were saying that with sarcasm. Anyway, so this isn't the important part of this. What the important part is, let me show you social media. What is going on there? Because it was about the story. Well, actually, I can take you right to my timeline. It'll be quicker. What I'm going to show you is what was posted with that. And what I want to point out here is right here. When KMOV posted on their Facebook, and I'll take you straight to theirs. When they posted the picture, what they said were, "Why are a bunch of armed men standing on top of boarded up businesses in Ferguson? They are not the National Guard." That's what they said on social media when they posted that story. It's clear to me what they are trying to do is get people against the idea of Oath Keepers, trained professionals at what they're doing to be protecting these businesses. It seems like they're trying to get a public outcry. Now, we've already know that they've removed the firearms from many, the gun stores and stuff like that. So you really need to start questioning the agenda here. You really need to start looking at what's going on and starting to ask why. I've already showed you proof that the grand jury decision was mishandled. I've already showed so many other different things. If you go and you look up all these different acts, all these, not just the Patriot Act, but the NDA 2012, the internment and resettlement operations. If you go look up all of this stuff, you will see that all of this stuff is outlined. But see, the problem is getting the American people into a position to where they're willing to give up everything, including their firearms, including a natural born right to be able to protect yourself. But they have to, especially in this country, they have to scare the people enough, or they have to take enough away from the people to get the people in a position to where they feel like that's their only recourse. That is what they are doing. That is exactly what they are doing. They have been looking for a reason to be able to achieve this for a long time. It's pretty clear. Sandy Hook, they were trying to take the guns then. When Trayvon Martin happened, they were trying to start a civil war then. I'm not going to go as far to say as that Darren Wilson was a part of the Illuminati and he done this on purpose or no. But even the politicians will admit that they will seize upon any opportunity to push their agenda. And if you think the Democrats and Republicans are on two different sides, you're sadly mistaken. They're owned by the same people. And they are in a position to where if they go against that system, if they go against those people that own them, they wouldn't be in the office that they're in. They wouldn't have the campaign money to run the campaigns to be able to get themselves out there in the public's eye to get those votes. You know, it's the same thing, you know, when you say, well, why don't doctors buck against the system? You know, because they're not supposed to talk about the natural cures, or they're not supposed to speak out against vaccines, or they're not supposed to. They're in the same kind of position. You know, they will lose their medical license, not be able to perform their job, not be able to pay back their student loans, not be able to feed their families. Same position. Same with teachers, not speaking out against things like Common Core. And the craziness going on in the schools with this zero tolerance nutcase stuff. I mean, come on. You know, I've said it a million times. The Pop-Tart, you know, taking a bite out of its shape, that's stupid. And then on the other extreme, on the other coast of the country, you know, due to specific religion, children are allowed to take knives into school because their religion says that they, I guess, are supposed to have a knife, like a dagger type thing. You know, and I'm not speaking out against the religion, or, you know, I mean, come on. I mean, I do remember, I'm not that old. I mean, I'm 42, but I can remember going to school. I can remember seeing shotguns in the back windows of, and no, I didn't go to school down in, you know, down in some Hickville, you know, place or something like that. That wasn't the case. But I do remember going to school and there being shotguns in the gun racks of the people's trucks, like the farmers' trucks and whatnot. No big deal. Nobody really batted an eye at it. They really didn't. At the same time, I can remember I had a Cub Scout knife that was given to me by my grandpa, and I always carried it on me. It was just a little bitty, kind of like a Swiss Army knife, but it was like a Cub Scout version of it. And I can remember getting dressed in gym class or after gym, and that knife falling out of my pocket. And there'd be, no, you know, Callahan's got a knife. And I can remember getting that heirloom that you know, that was passed down to me from my grandfather, taken away from me and not returned at the end of the day or whatever. So, I mean, there's craziness, and it's been going on a long time. But we all have to stand up together, you know? But to do that, the people that disapprove of what's going on in Ferguson have to understand that those people that are lighting fires, regardless of whether they are inspired and enabled by the government or not, those people that are wreaking that havoc, that are running around shooting the town up, whether those people are government inspired or enabled or not, they are not the same people as the protesters. Two different groups of people. We need to all stand up with the protesters. I'm not saying you have to agree with what they're protesting about. No, not at all. This is the United States of America. You have the right to your own thoughts. You know, get out there and protest against them respectfully and peacefully if you disagree. But get out there. Show this government, show this country, and show the world what the United States was founded for and what it is about. You can't do that sitting behind a computer screen, shooting off smart-ass comments, apologize for the language, you know, cutting down another person. Get out there. Instead of sitting there telling them how they need to get a job or how they, whatever, get out there. Get out there and peacefully protest. That's what America needs to see, is that we are what make up this country. Not some pencil necks in a suit and tie sitting behind a multi-$1,000 desk that could care less about you or your life or what happens in it. I think that's the important thing here. Anyway, that's what I've got for you tonight. I know it was kind of a lame show. I apologize for that. It's a bit discombobulated, running way behind today. I will be keeping an eye on what's going on in Ferguson as well as around the country, and I will come up live and I will stream the live feeds if something big starts to go on. And other than that, I will see you Monday or this weekend again if things start to pop up. So just keep an eye on the channel, and you know, well, it's been one of those days. I'm ready to go to bed already, but no, I'm going to stick up and see what happens. So, all right, folks. Well, you have a good one. I will talk to you soon. May God bless you. May He walk with you. Always be one with your spirit. I love you all. Hang in there. I'm telling you, we have got one hell of a long road ahead of us. All right, good night, folks.